A special thanks as always to EA for being the sponsors of today's video.
Is this a relatable site?
No teammates.
And how about this site? Is this relatable?
Oh my god.
And how about this?
No, I thought not. But what if instead of this, we could go to this more regularly? Well, today I'm here to help you do just that. Yes people, how are you all doing? It's Ashton here, and I hope you're all having a fantastic day. As we all know by now, Apex can be a pretty brutal solo queue experience. Anytime you play a game that is designed to be played as a team, as a solo, then obviously you're going to be having a pretty difficult time with it. And since there are so many of you solo queue warlords out there, I figured I'd help you out by dropping a video to help you guys get more wins and kills in your solo queue experience, and to hopefully help you guys improve as players along the way. If you guys are new to the channel, or if you just haven't already, then do make sure to drop a like on the video if you do enjoy this content, and do consider subscribing if you haven't already, because I am going to be streaming at 100,000 subscribers and we are fast approaching that number, so I'm pretty hyped for that. I hope you guys are too. But cracking on with today's video, the first area we're going to cover is no-fill. No-fill is an option that you choose before going into a game of Apex by unticking this box here on the left, which says fill teammates, meaning that when you drop in, you'll be dropping in on your own as a solo versus squads. Now, I would personally never recommend doing this, but I'll cover that later. For now, if you are deciding to no-fill, then we need to talk about what we can do to up your chances of winning these games. Firstly, if you are deciding to no-fill, then I would highly recommend only doing it on duos. Winning any game of Apex Legends when you're outnumbered is extremely hard, and narrowing that number down to 2 potential enemies per team is definitely going to make it a lot easier for you to clutch up in those situations. Next, we got to talk about legend choice, and for me, if you're no-filling, there is no choice but to choose a mobility legend. Movement is going to be one of the key factors to you outplaying multiple enemies at once, which is exactly what you're going to have to do a lot of if you're no-filling in this game. So legends like Pathfinder, Bangalore, and Octane are really good at outmaneuvering and outplaying your opponents in combat situations, and also they give you an out if you need to get away and heal up quickly if you're in a tricky situation, which a lot of other legends just can't do. Legends like Wraith and Horizon are also really good at doing this, but don't quite have the same movement speed as Bangalore, Octane, or Pathfinder, but they're still very viable characters in my opinion. Weapon-wise, you don't want to be prolonging fights for too long, and you want to be killing your enemies as quickly as possible, so assault rifles, SMGs, LMGs, and shotguns are probably the preferred categories to be running if you're no-filling. I wouldn't recommend running a sniper rifle or anything like that in this situation, because you don't want these fights to be going on for too long. The best way of going about no-fill, especially on duos, is to try and third-party as much as possible, as you don't have those teammates to back you up if things go wrong. You've got to remember that you are only a solo coming up against a squad of 3 players at once if you're in squads, and obviously only 2 in duos, but even so, having more than one enemy fight you at once is extremely hard to deal with, especially if they're both focusing you, so you want to be coming in unsuspectingly, getting that first knock whilst taking as little damage as possible, and that's going to give you the best chance of winning in these situations. Always remember that it doesn't matter how good the enemy team is compared to you, because if they've got numbers on you, then they've got the advantage. That being said though, you might remember earlier that I said I don't recommend no-filling, and honestly, that is the truth. I wouldn't recommend to anyone that they no-fill on Apex, and that is because you're giving yourself a much harder time than you need to. Apex is a game designed to be played as a team, regardless of how good you are, and it is going to be extremely difficult coming up against 3v1 situations every single time you fight. Regardless of if it's a third party or not, you still have to be at the top of your game to come out on top, and if you're solo queuing just trying to have a little bit of fun, I really wouldn't recommend doing this unless you're looking for an extra bit of challenge in the way. My good friend the Gaming Merchant did a video recently where he no-filled duos and it took him 37 games in a row in order to get one good game. And for me, that is a good return. That was actually a pretty quick turnaround for him to get that good game. So definitely beware, if you are going to no-fill, then you are choosing the hard route. So with no-fill out of the way, we can talk about my preferred way of solo queuing Apex Legends, which is to fill teammates on trios. Now before we even unpack everything there is to talk about, because actually there is a lot to talk about when solo queuing trios, you have to ask yourself a few questions before you start your session. What do you value the most in Apex Legends? Do you want high kill games? Do you want wins? Do you want a little bit of both mixed in, or are you just happy to go around, maybe win one game out of 5 and just have a good time along the way? For most people, I know that wins are the top priority, so we'll mostly be talking about that, but there'll also be a little bit of advice sprinkled in there for how to get kills along the way as well. For players of different skill levels, different amounts of kills will equate to being better or worse games. For example, I'm usually happy with a game where I get about 10 or more kills for me. That is a good game. Anything under that, I'll say, is an average game or an okay game, and I'm not really too fussed, but anything below 3 or 4 kills, I'm generally not happy with. I'm usually not too fussed about winning games or not. For me, it's usually about going out of the way to get as many kills as possible, and if we can win, that'll be an added bonus as well. It's important to set your expectations out before you solo queue, because it can be a frustrating experience when things go wrong, so being mindful of what you expect to achieve is important in this process. So one thing everyone seems to agree on is that whenever they solo queue, their teammates are always terrible. However, I'm here to argue that not all teammates are bad. They're just trying to win the game just like you, and maybe they are not quite as good at the game as you, but usually they're just looking out for themselves, most likely the same way that you are only looking out for yourself whilst you're solo queuing as well. And that is one of the main reasons that solo queuing can be so difficult, is that teammates are just 3 solo players all on the same team but only thinking of themselves and not for the team. Because let's be honest, when you're solo queuing, you're not thinking about what your teammate is doing most likely. You're just thinking about what's in front of you, where the enemies are, and how you can kill them. So my first tip is actually to try and be mindful of your teammates and what they're doing. If they're not pinging or they're not letting you know what they're doing exactly, then go out of your way to try and make sure that you understand what they're doing, that's on you as well. This is one of the many things that comes under the big umbrella of game sense, and having a game sense of knowing what your teammates are doing, knowing what the enemies are doing, and knowing what you are doing is super important and is a really hard skill to master, but doing this while solo queuing can really improve your game sense overall. Making an active effort to be a good teammate to your teammates is more likely to make them come and help you when you're in a time of need than if you just leave them on their own to fend for themselves, and when they bleed out, you're halfway across the map because you needed some light ammo. This obviously links in as well with teammates leaving the game. Unfortunately, that is just the way it is, and some people aren't going to stick around and wait for their banner to be retrieved and revived. They just want to jump in, shoot some people, and sure, maybe the no-fill mode is for them, but then they have to suffer through playing 1v3 situations all the time, so it's a really difficult compromise to come to for respawn. I know it can be frustrating when teammates leave the game, but let's be honest, we've all done it. I do it. Sometimes you're just not in the mood to sit around and wait, and I'm gonna say it, that's perfectly fine. Just try not to take it too much on the chin and just brush it off, take you into the next game, and maybe your teammates won't leave in that game. Another good way of initiating teamwork I found is just by teabagging and being friendly with your teammates, dropping them any ammo or attachments they need, trying to be as helpful as possible. I know it sounds stupid, but just teabagging with teammates is like a universal sign of, hey, I'm a good guy, you're a good guy. Let's try and win this, let's play this together rather than just being 3 solos on the same team. There have been times where I've done this, we've gone on to win the game, and we've decided to play a little bit more after the game, and in that way you can find friends so that you no longer have to solo queue anymore. With talk of teammates out of the way, we can talk about where to drop and what legends you should be running while solo queuing. In terms of the drop, it does come down a lot to what we said earlier about what you expect and what you want from your games. If you're after high kills, then I would recommend landing close to the hot drop, but not necessarily on it, because maybe your teammates don't want a hot drop and maybe they'll pull out and go somewhere completely different and you'll be left alone, or perhaps maybe your teammates just aren't quite as good as you and they're not going to survive a hot drop. So if you land close to a hot drop, you can loot up a little bit and run in while there are still going to be a lot of enemies hanging around ready to kill. If you're going for wins, you could land a little bit more safe, loot up, and go for that win in the long term rather than just going for those short term early kills. Legend-wise, again, I would always choose mobility characters while solo queuing, because at the end of the day, even if your teammates are trying, you are still gonna have to be looking out for yourself more than anyone else, and having that ability to get out of a tough situation if your teammates have gone down is super important. Another really important tip for solo queuing is to make use of all of your senses. More likely than not, you're not going to have that same line of communication that you have with your pre-made squad or your duo partner with a random solo queue squad, because you're probably not going to be talking over the mic quite as much, and if you are, then the chemistry is not going to be there in the same way as it is with your friends. So listening out for footsteps, gunshots, or potentially people landing on you, anything that can give away that an enemy is near is very, very important. Keeping your eyes peeled for potential third parties on the horizon or anything that could give away that there is potentially danger around the corner is really important as well. Just having a general awareness of what is going on around you is really heightened if you're solo queuing, because in a pre-made squad your teammates would notice these things, but now the onus of that is on you. Lastly, I want to mention that it is obviously really easy to let frustration settle in after a couple of bad results solo queuing. That's why for me, you have to set your expectations pretty low. Regardless of how good of a player you are, it is a struggle solo queuing on this game, especially when you come up against pre-made 3 stacks of very good players. Just remember, it's not always a bad reflection of yourself as a player if you have a tough couple of games. You definitely have it in you to be a better player, and sometimes you just have a funny 5 minutes and you can definitely come back stronger. Before we end this video though, I do want to talk about what is in my opinion the best way to play Apex Legends, and for me, that is duo queuing in trios. Now obviously this is going to require having a friend or a partner to play with, and I know some of you just don't have that, and obviously I really hope you're able to make friends while solo queuing, but if you do have a friend or someone else to play with, then for me this is the best way to experience Apex Legends. Having a teammate that you know has got your back and is on the same wavelength of you is really, really game changing when it comes to playing trios, and for me it is super enjoyable running around with just one friend trying to outplay full squads of 3. You're going to be able to take more risks than if you're solo queuing because you know you can trust your teammate behind you, and it just makes the overall experience way more enjoyable and way less stressful. So if you are someone who enjoys high kill games and high damage games more than just wins, then I would highly recommend just trying to find a duo partner and running duos in trios, because for me, that is the most fun you can have on Apex Legends. But guys, that is going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you have enjoyed. I hope these tips help you out while solo queuing and you guys can have a little bit of a better time while solo queuing. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more regular Apex Legends content. But until next time guys, it's been your boy Ashton. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy and goodbye.